Well, hello everybody. Welcome to our 5 December 2023 Q&A AMA. I'm Debbie Levitt from Delta CX, and I am here live, completely, totally live. Happy to take your questions on pretty much anything that you think I might know the answer to. You can ask your questions here in the live chat, or you can also send longer ones and anonymous ones through our link at deltacx.com/links. If you are a Patreon member, mid-level or higher, you have a special area of our Discord to ask a question and get priority treatment. But since it's the holiday season, I don't think we'll have too many questions, and priority treatment might not be as special today, but there you go. As always, speaking of our Patreon members, I want to thank everybody who has been a past, present, and future paid Patreon member. Prices start at $1 American a month. I hope it's worth at least that, but you be the judge. You can also join for free, which is kind of like joining my mailing list since I've been moving away from my mailing list. So feel free to be the first to know the things and be more involved at patreon.com/CXCC. So we got one question ahead of time, so I'm going to start with that. For those who are listening to me speak, yes, I still have a bit of the flu. It's changing a little every day. Today it's kind of runny nosy, but mostly it's been coughing fit-y, which is not fun. All right, so let's see. Our first question looks like this. It's kind of a double question, so we've got two in one. And the first part of the question says, is UX the toughest job to get into now within tech compared to other roles like developers, product managers, etc.? So is it the toughest job to get into? It certainly feels like it. Do I have data to back this up, as sometimes people ask me for? No, I don't have data. I'm not out there surveying people. I'm not collecting data. I'm just reading LinkedIn every day and listening to all of you. And I do think that it is very hard to get into UX. It's definitely the hardest I've ever seen in my entire life. It's very hard for a number of reasons. It's hard because so many jobs are being cut. I would say because of the economy, but mostly it's just greed. And it's also hard because starting around 2017, a lot of companies decided they didn't want newbies and juniors. They just wanted experienced people, which of course closed the door to newbies and people who would be our experienced people now. A lot of us warned against it. Companies didn't care. So bizarrely, they don't want to train UX newbies and juniors, but they want to train other people to do UX at companies like product managers, and I don't get it. Doesn't make sense. So UX is very hard to get into. Is it harder than other stuff? I don't know. I've seen a lot of product manager jobs look a little bit similar in that it seems like they don't necessarily welcome newbies and juniors. They kind of expect you to have experience and have done this already. So I think in general, the world just feels closed to newbies and juniors. It seems very hard to get into jobs when you haven't already had a job. So the whole thing is broken. I keep waiting for good UX leaders to open up these newbie jobs, and they're not. So I just keep pointing at our leaders and saying, do better. Stop training product managers to do our jobs. If we're training anybody, bring in UX apprentices, interns, and juniors and train them. So I can't explain that. The second part of the question says, also, you talk about to avoid fake it until you make it. Can you provide examples so I can be careful on this? Sure. There are some talking UX heads out there who I'm not necessarily a fan of, and they will often tell you, fake it till you make it. So for example, they might tell you, hey, you're a UX newbie, you just finished a course or a boot camp. Well, put yourself out there as being higher level. Go for a senior job. Go for a lead job. Well, hypothetically, for a person who is new to something to be working at the level of someone with 5 or more years of experience, you'd probably have to be faking it to some extent. It's very unlikely that you are a newbie to UX, having just completed maybe a course, maybe you're in your first job, but you're really working at a much higher level, like working at the level of someone with years of experience. And so fake it until you make it usually happens when people find that they're in over their head. They've taken a job that expected them to have more experience, expertise, knowledge, skills than they do. And the faking it part is, instead of being honest about that and saying, hey, you knew when you interviewed me that I didn't yet know how to do whatever the skill is, let's say observational research. Hey, you knew when you interviewed me that I'd never done observational research before, and now you're asking me to do it, and you expect me to do it alone and at an expert level with no support and no help. I need help here. Now, that's not faking it until you're making it, because you're being honest about your skill level and you're asking for help. That doesn't mean your job is going to give you that help, and it doesn't mean that they have any care or empathy for your well-being or your career trajectory. But at least you're not pretending that you can do something that you possibly can't or have never done before. So the advice I'll often see on LinkedIn related to this is, hey, if someone asks you to do something that you don't know how to do, just Google it. And my thought is, that implies that these things are easy to learn and easy to do, and they're often not. If you had to start doing observational research when you've never done it before, you could Google it. You could try to hurry up and read some books related to observational research, like Larry Marine's Disruptive Research and other books out there about observational research. But reading those books is going to take time. You still might not know what you're doing, and yet your job is expecting you to do this thing. So usually fake it until you make it is you're just going to pretend you know what you're doing. You're going to act confident. You're going to act like you know what to do, and you're just going to do this thing whether or not you knew how to do it. And that can cause a lot of problems. It can cause problems for you because you might not do this work well, and you might be held responsible for that later. It can cause mental health problems for you, or this is where people might feel confidence issues, or, oh my gosh, I'm an imposter. Yes, if you're faking it until you're making it, you're an imposter. You just are. Sorry, bad news. But faking it would be being an imposter. So if you end up feeling imposter syndrome, I would say, yes. But not faking it would be being more honest with yourself and with other people around you. Hey, this is not yet an area of my expertise or specialty. This is something I'm still new to. I would like to partner up with someone more senior on this so that I'm not doing this work badly. I don't want to guess at how this work is done. I don't want to run the risk that I do a bad job here. And you knew when you interviewed me that I hadn't done this before. Now you're asking me to do it. This is not something that's easy to learn or do, like it's learning pivot tables in Excel. Oh, we've got a LinkedIn comment. Let's put that up. Let's see. Is this a question? Yes, this is a question. Thank you for your question. We'll put your question up next. Sorry, it's not telling me who you are. It just says LinkedIn user, but I always love questions from anybody who's watching our show live. So we will definitely get that up as our next question after I'm done with this one. So thanks for joining. So in the end, ultimately, I don't want to see people faking it. Our work is too important and it's too mission critical to pretend we know what we're doing when we don't. There's nothing wrong with learning it when you don't know how to do it. But again, you don't want to be faking it. You don't want to pretend that you can do something that you can't. You could run into problems with how your job was done. You could run into problems with how people perceive your job. They might now think, wow, yesterday that person didn't know how to do that. And they watched 2 of Debbie's videos and now they're claiming that they can absolutely do this and they're an expert at it. Oh, UX must be easy to learn and do. Why did we even hire this person? So you run risks when you fake that you can do something that you can't yet do. I always think it's better to be honest. For example, sometimes, very rarely, once in a while, someone will ask me to do something heavily quant and analytical. That's not my strength. Now, could I rush and Google it and look up a couple of things and try to take a quick course or read an ebook and try to say, yep, I know how to do deep quant analysis? I would rather be honest and just say, I'm sorry, this is not my expertise or specialty. If you'd like me to work on this, can you please pair me up with someone who's great at it so that I can learn from working with them and shadowing them? I don't want to fake it. All right. I hope that helps. Thank you for those questions. Let's go to the question we just got from LinkedIn. Let me bring down the size a little bit. Here we go. And this question says, after a few weeks on a research project, doing interviews and task analysis, Larry Marine's way, we ended up identifying a lot of issues. However, focusing on major issues and solving them is going smoothly now, but I'm seeing a barrier we'll be facing soon, which is when the solution is a little bit hard to sell in for different reasons, but mainly we need to highlight the problem before offering the solution. What would you recommend for us when the user persona is different than the buyer persona, B2B? Okay, I am not sure I understand this question, so I hope that you are still watching live on LinkedIn and can help me a little bit and give me some more information. So, if I'm understanding this correctly, you're having some success so far with Larry Marine's techniques, which is great, but it sounds like you have a possible solution coming. Sorry about my voice, I still have this flu. You have a possible solution coming and you're worried that somebody's not going to buy in on it or let you do it because you need to highlight the problem. Wouldn't the research help you highlight the problem? After the research, wouldn't you have problem statements and problem definitions that would help you show the problem? I think another question would be, did you try my impact map, which is supposed to help you tie customer problems and open opportunities to business needs and business gains? It is in the Disruptive Research book, but we also did an entire episode on it here on the CXCC YouTube channel. You can find that by going to YouTube and typing in CX-CC 205. It was episode 205. So I think the question is, can you tell me a little bit more about why you think you're going to have a problem getting buy-in to solve this problem if you are so far having a decent time communicating problems and finding some good solutions? I'm trying to figure out what's going wrong here or what you might be missing. I don't totally know what I'm speaking to. And it also sounds like your company cares less about the people who aren't the buyers, it's the end users. And of course, the company should care about the end users because they may go back to the buyers and go, this thing sucks. Let's not renew the contract. So I think you want to make sure that you can tie all of this stuff back and talk about the importance of making the end users happy in addition to the buyers. Oops, sorry. The buying I meant here was from the customer side because users perceive that they have no issues in operations, but we can see it clearly. So again, I'm not totally sure what's going on here. I'm definitely confused, so put up with me a little bit, please. Your users or customers think that everything is okay, which they might not even think. They might be saying that to you just to be polite. Yeah, this was easy to use. Sure, this is okay. Yeah, I like this. That could be a lie. The most important thing is that you're doing the observational research and you're seeing something isn't right. Some users are having a difficult time, an inefficient time, or they're running into errors or dead ends. So I guess my question is, if you are finding that some users are having problems and you can show this with your research insights and suggestions and maybe some video clips from people who ran into this problem, what's the question? Because just because a customer says, oh yeah, this was good, or yeah, I give it a good score, or I think this was easy, we pretty much never go by that because what we see takes precedent over whatever people say. What people say and what people do are rarely the same thing. And if people say, oh yeah, this is pretty good, I like this is great, and then we watch them struggle or make mistakes or have problems, that wins over, I don't have any issues, I'm doing fine. Sorry, there's usually about 40 seconds delay between whatever I'm saying and some of what you're seeing on LinkedIn and YouTube. So I hope that for the person asking the question, we can continue our conversation. Sorry that there's this delay while I wait for you to type stuff. There are no other questions in my queue, so if you'd like to ask a question, please put it in the live chat and you will come after we figure out this question. You can also send it to deltacx.com/links. That's a web page where you'll see a link to send in a long or anonymous question. Even though this one has accidentally shown up anonymously, it's not telling me the LinkedIn user's name. And I'm just checking email for those anonymous questions. Ana Lucia says, I'm late, but I'm here. Hi, everyone. Hi, Ana Lucia. I hope you're having a good December and not too cold yet. I expect these shows to be generally quiet through the holiday season, as some people are traveling or focused on visitors and things like that, but I'm going to hold the shows anyway. Next week's show, I will be in Arizona, and we're supposed to have Dr. Nick as our guest. Hopefully my travel computer can handle that, but I will certainly do my best. So we will continue our shows. Excuse me. I can't wait till I'm done with this flu. Oof, don't get the flu. Okay, LinkedIn user says, let's rephrase. We identified the most time and effort consuming tasks, fantastic, optimized it, super, and now we're working on designing the solution. Sounds pretty good. So the question would be, if they don't actually see the problem they have, which is their own inefficiency, how would we approach understanding their buying decisions? Well, it sounds like the understanding the buying decisions might be separate, because you're talking about how the user uses this, and understanding the buying decision might be separate, because I would want to learn how much do the buyers interact with the users when making a buying decision. Do the buyers have the users doing trials? Do they check in with them every so often once a buying decision is made? I think this is a separate study, if I'm understanding you correctly, and I recognize that I might not be understanding you correctly, and I apologize, but I think you have two separate things going on here. One is, should we optimize the experience even if end users don't see their own inefficiency? And my answer would normally be yes. Even if people don't know how badly something is going for them, if you can see it and you can make it better for them, and you think that making it better for them is better for them and it's not going to be a downgrade, then I would say yes, definitely optimize this, make this flow better, make these steps more streamlined, fewer errors, easier to learn and use, and make sure you share that with your salespeople and other people so that they can bring that into their selling. Hey, we have these great new screens that are going to make your work even more efficient than it was before, more accurate, whatever you think are the selling points. The second question I think here is, how do we study buyers to understand some of their decision making, to see how much of that decision making involves the end users and the end users' experience? I think that's what we're talking about. So what I would want to do is I would want to spin up some research with a representative number of people from the buyer audiences or personas. Maybe you have 3 different types of buyers. Maybe you have 2. Maybe you have 5. Maybe you have more. But I would say go with some of your sweet spot buyer typologies and get a representative number from each of those. Maybe you can speak to 8 of each buyer. Sometimes you can't get 8, you've got to go with a lower number. But wherever possible, I try to do 8 or 10 or so from each different group that I have. Maybe your company does small, medium, and large businesses. So let's talk to 5, 10, 8, 10 smalls, mediums, larges. And you want to talk to them about their process in how they ended up making their decision. Now, you can pick some people. I would say if you really want to do this well, I would recruit some people who chose your company, who are current customers. You might pick some people who left your company, who are former customers and weren't happy and left, and find out how they first decided to go with you and then later decided to go with someone else. And you can also recruit people who have never been your customer. So in addition to the way that your company might break down the different buyer personas or groups, I think you can also take a look at these other types of people, because if you only look at the current customers, you might just have people who are happy or happy enough or won't admit that they're shopping around and thinking of leaving you. So I would say it would be great if you can also meet people who left you, if possible, and people who have never worked with your company, maybe considered you and picked someone else and never really did business with you. These are people, and that's why you want to end up with 8 or 10 of each group, because I might want to try to go for 10 or 12, and maybe I get 3 or 4 small business people who are current customers, ex-customers, or never were customers, but could have been because they fit our audience. So yes, you might end up talking to 30 or so people, but you're going to learn a lot about that process. Now, it's going to be tough to do observational research because very often a buying decision like this happens over a longer period of time. There's a lot of different players involved, and it's really hard for you to watch it. So this is something that would have to be more interview-based, where you're asking people to talk you through their process. So how did you know you needed a system that does blah, 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 whatever it is? How did you know that you needed a B2B SaaS that would control your HR or help you with your invoicing, whatever your company does? Were you previously with a different service? How did you know you wanted to leave that service and find a new vendor? Who else is part of this decision? Is there someone above you who you have to report to? Is there someone else who has to make a final decision? Is there someone else who chooses a budget? Is there someone else who signs off on that budget? Ecosystem of all the people who are involved in these decisions. Do you work with the end users of the system to have them try the system out? Do you watch any of that? Do you speak with those people? Find out more. This is going to be very interview based, and it's going to be hard to do a task analysis because it's not necessarily one discrete task. It's a larger process of how people make a large business decision. You can try to map it out, but it's probably going to be very different for each person you talk to. And if you can find similarities, that's great, but don't be too surprised if many companies do it differently, or maybe you're different. Maybe you find that companies where the buyer also approves the budget, they tend to do it like this. Maybe it's not even broken up by small, medium, or large, or how your company breaks up these personas or groups. So I would probably want to be working with people in that kind of conversation. I've sometimes seen this done where the interviewer or researcher or moderator, however you want to call them, will share a blank Miro board. And as people talk about, well, first I do this, they'll kind of put up a sticky note and they'll kind of build it in the Miro board as people talk about it. So they might say, and you might say, okay, first you realize you need this because this happens at your company. Is there someone else you talk to about that? Oh yeah, I have to talk to the VP of finance to make sure we can get a new budget because the new service is probably going to be more expensive. Okay, put up a sticky note, talks to VP of, finance. What else do you do? What's another step that you take here? Oh, well, then I talked to some of my friends about what services they prefer. Okay, and how do you know which ones you trust? And then you end up just putting lots of sticky notes, which may or may, they might look linear, but chances are these processes aren't linear. You might find out how many of these companies do they do trials with. Maybe we narrow it down to only 2 trials or only 1. So there's so much that you can do when you're talking to these people to learn more about that, but always dig for collaborators, especially people who have to approve things or provide a budget or sign the check. Find out about how they negotiate contracts. Do they have to bring in someone else to do that? Do they do that? Do they prefer shorter contracts, longer contracts? Have they ever felt like the contract they got ended up wrong for them later? If you really want to understand the buyer journey, you have to have some pretty long conversations with these people, and I would definitely be paying them big money for their time, especially the people who left your company and have no reason to try to help you to be better, and the people who never did business with your company who don't care about you and have no reason to help you be better. So I would definitely be giving each person $200-300 or euros, like serious money, because their information is really going to help your company understand more of the buyer journey and where and how and who around all of these decisions. You wrote, that's a great approach. I would also ask about their current use of similar solutions like other software. Yeah, so remember, you're still asking them about a task in a sense. It's just probably not clean enough to be easily mapped as a task analysis. But you might say, hey, when it comes to HR solutions or invoicing or whatever your B2B SaaS does, you might ask, what other tools and systems are you using? And whatever they answer, keep asking that one. Okay, you also use Excel. How do you use Excel? Okay, interesting, thank you. And are there any other tools and systems you're using? Oh, you're using this one for jobs and candidates. Okay, that's very interesting. Thank you for sharing. And what else are you using? That's one where you got to keep asking the question until they go, no, I think that's everything, because you don't want to just take their first answer as their only answer when you ask what tools and systems they're also using. So yeah, I hope that helps and gives you some ideas of how you can learn more about buyer experiences and buyer journeys. But I would say in general, these are very complicated, and they take they're hard to map, and they're probably better mapped from a service blueprint perspective to say, like, look, this is when the customer is doing stuff. This is when our team is doing stuff. This is when our salespeople interact with them. This is when our tech people interact with them to set them up a demo space. This is when some other companies, salespeople or tech people interact with them. Stuff like that. And then you can really see the map of that journey. So there you go. Chantel P is here. Always good to see you. Hello. I'm planning on working on my portfolio again over the holidays. How many case studies would be ideal? I'm aiming for 5. Super. Let me put this on our question list and also put it up on the screen, since I have the little ones down here set to time out after about a minute, so it'll go away automatically. So, how many case studies should you have in a portfolio? My answer is most hiring managers are only going to look at 1, because they just want to figure out in 90 seconds, do we want to meet Chantel? Do we want to interview this person? Yes, no. Let's take a look at some of their work and see if it looks like they know what they're doing. Now, that doesn't mean you only have a portfolio with 1 thing in it. Doesn't make a lot of sense. So normally if people say, hey, I think I want to have 2 case studies or 5, my question is, are these different? Are they different industries? Are they different types of work you did? This one might be more design. This one was more research. Or this one might be... this one was for a B2B SaaS company, and this one was more for a B2C e-commerce company. I think when you can show different types of work for different industries, then it makes sense to have more stuff in a portfolio. But sometimes I look at a portfolio and there's 3 case studies and they just look like the identical thing for the same type of company, or they're all fake. And then I go, I only needed one of these. But so my portfolio years ago actually used to have 9 case studies. Why? Because I had a lot of different type of work that I was trying to show. I was trying to show research work. I was trying to show design work. I was trying to show prototyping and testing work. And sometimes those were part of the same project and sometimes they weren't. So I think there's nothing wrong with having any number of case studies as long as you have a great landing page that makes it extremely clear what kind of project this was and your role on it and what industry this was. Because if I'm a hiring manager and I'm hoping to find something in a B2B SaaS, and you have a page full of 5 case studies, 4, 7, whatever it is, and they all say, here's UX research, here's design, here's research, here's design, and I go, but I want to know what this person's done for B2B SaaS because that's what we do. I want to see work that looks like what we do. So make sure that your portfolio landing page helps me know which of your projects is best for me to see, because usually I want to see something that's similar to what we do, whatever that company is. So I would say, meeting canceled. Okay, no problem. I hope to see that person later if they're watching live. That means I have a coaching slot open at 10 p.m. my time tonight if anyone wants it. Otherwise, I am going to sleep. Chantel, am I going in the right direction here? Is this helping you out? Does this make sense? I don't think there's a particular number that's ideal. To me, it's more about, does your homepage or landing page make it clear what role you played on these projects, whether or not they're real, and what kind of industry or business this was for. Because if you're applying to a startup, I'm hoping to see that you have other startup work. But if your homepage or landing page just shows design and branding, I go, which one's a startup? Chantel says, yes, that's what I'm figuring out. I've worked in a number of sectors, a mix of UI, UXR, and if you've done a project with UX and UI, do you put it in one case study or split it out? No, I put them together wherever possible because I want someone looking through my stuff to see as much of my work as possible. So for example, I had a huge project that I did in 2013 where it had almost everything you can think of: research, information architecture, design and prototyping, usability testing. I think we had some information architecture testing and some ugly stakeholder management. And that was just one long case study. So I didn't split that out and go, here's the research work, here's the information architecture work. No, definitely bring it all together, because sometimes people are just scrolling down the page and glancing quickly at headlines and images and going, yeah, okay, looks like they know what they're doing. So I wouldn't break those things out separately if they're part of the same project. Keep them together. But then again, on your homepage or your landing page, make it clear this one is research and visual design. This one is UX design and testing and some branding. So help me think, UX the hell out of your own homepage or landing page and say, okay, I imagine that a hiring manager or somebody is coming to this screen, and how can I help them find the case study that they would be most interested in? Yes, Ana Lucia says, I'm using that advice on my portfolio. Thank you. Time to revamp the descriptions of the case studies. Yes. I'm going to move on to the next question from Ana Lucia, but Chantel, hopefully that was helpful, gave you some ideas. Okay. Ana Lucia says, I have a question. I've been seeing some UX researchers saying they pivoted to research ops. That confused me a bit. Is there any difference between the work of a UX researcher and R ops, or is it just another job title? Good luck, Chantel. Keep us posted. Ana Lucia, this is one of those, it depends. I always thought of research ops as a job that mostly did the recruiting part of a project. So let's see if we can find our on-screen graphics here and talk about the process of research. We have our planning and goals and strategy. We're going to get our script ready. And then we're going to recruit the right people, schedule them, get them into the system, and then our moderator or researcher is going to run those sessions, etc. I've always seen research ops as this piece. Usually the research ops people, in the old days at least, used to be doing the recruiting. They took that work off of the researcher. It was something that researchers hate to do. Your research ops person could just be doing the recruiting to find the right number of the right people for this study. And then sometimes your research ops person kind of returned at the end of the project to get your report, your artifacts, your maps, your video clips into the repository. So the research ops person was also sometimes the keeper of the repository. If you are seeing a different definition of research ops than that, which is mostly recruiting piece, and get it in the repository piece, then it really depends on what that definition is. I used to see the research ops jobs that I'm describing as kind of what used to be a newbie's way in. If you wanted to be a researcher, you would start out doing kind of this grunt work of the recruiting piece and scheduling, and then the repository and archiving piece. And then eventually you'd work your way up to start assisting on research or doing some of the research. So that used to be a newbie researcher's way in. But if you're saying that experienced researchers are moving into research ops jobs, then my guess is that this has a different definition. Because again, it used to mean kind of the grunt work that in many cases didn't even require a researcher. I know people who work in research ops jobs who aren't researchers, but they're really great at organizing and coordinating people, finding the right people, getting them scheduled, and then organizing and coordinating those archives and those repositories. So if research ops is some new thing that we're calling a more strategic job or something like that, that's news to me. I would have to hear more from you, or I would have to see a job description to better understand what somebody means by research ops, because research operations and design operations have the same problem where they could mean the simplest grunt work, like design ops used to be production work and grunt work. But now sometimes people say, no, design ops is really strategic. You're really about the operation of the team. And I go, okay, I wish we'd picked a different word, because that term used to mean super grunt work and production work and order taking work. So I have to admit, I'm confused by some of the way we're using some of these titles, because they don't match what these titles used to mean. And I'm old enough to remember when these titles meant something else. So, Ana Lucia, can you tell me what research ops means in the context of your story? Because it probably doesn't mean that grunt work and that organization work and the recruiting and something. It probably means something more strategic if people feel like it's a place to move to. But I would have to see the job description to be able to make more sense of that. So sorry about that. Let's see. Any other questions? I'm usually here for an hour. I do expect these holiday time ones to be a little bit quieter, but let me know if anybody has a question. Oh, don't get the flu. Oh. Ana Lucia says, yeah, they're experienced. From what I've deduced from their posts and comments, they're saying UX research doesn't have a future. The future is research ops, but I have no idea why, honestly. I don't get that either, and I'm not seeing that on LinkedIn, so maybe I've unfollowed or blocked those people, or I'm not following them. I don't understand why anybody would say UX research doesn't have a future. It does. Companies love research. They really do. Do they understand UX research? Not always. But companies love research. They love surveys and focus groups. They love data. They love when people call up customers and talk to them. That could be UX or CX research. The companies really do love having knowledge and data. But they're sometimes resistant to UX research, and I think that's usually because of the unfortunate ways in which we describe the research, or we have bad leadership who can't explain the value of it. So companies think, why should we bother with this research that's going to take a longer amount of time? Let's just do something fast and cheap like a survey. And to me, it's really up to our leadership to say, look, there's a place and a time for surveys, but they're not always going to answer some of our most important questions, especially why people do or don't do things, how people do or don't do things. We're not going to know that from a survey. We're not going to know that from an A/B test. And so I think that people have just gotten bad at selling this. And since other people are claiming, well, this is easy, I can do it, I'm a product manager, I'll call up a customer and ask them what they like and what they want. And somebody goes, yeah, I guess that sounds like research. And we've done a very bad job going, no, that's not quite right. That might not be done well. That might not give you the right information. That could give you the wrong information. Because we tend to be really nice and not speak up, there you go. So yes, a lot of UX researchers have been laid off in the last year and a half, but I don't believe that means that UX research has no future. I think there's going to be kind of a return to this stuff when companies decide they care about quality. While you don't care about quality, anything goes. We can guess about users. We can just keep putting more and more guesses out there. And who needs to research or know anything? We'll just put out guesses. But eventually, if someone does the math and says, all these guesses really aren't working right for us, I don't think we're doing this right, then eventually we'll say, I think we need more research. And the funny thing is that even books and authors and trainers who I don't love, people like Teresa Torres, she's out there saying you should be doing deep early research with your users and customers so that you can understand them and see what opportunities there are to solve their problems. She is saying that, but for some reason, fans of her books and her other stuff just gloss over that because they don't want to do it. But she's telling you to do it. You should be doing it. So I think we have to fight that one a little bit more. Ana Lucia says, I've also been noticing they're associating continuous discovery with reops, but can't also that. Yeah, so continuous discovery is, again, one of those confusing, weird terms that tends to come from the Teresa Torres book. And it's just the idea that we are continuously doing early research, not evaluative testing, but early research to make sure we continuously know more about our users and customers so that we're creating the right products and services that will meet their needs and satisfy business goals. That's the idea behind continuous discovery research. We've done a couple of shows on it on YouTube, so you can definitely go to YouTube and write CXCC continuous discovery or discovery research. I'm sure these things will pop up, and I do have more stuff planned on it. But the bottom line is that anything that is discovery is supposed to be research. Even Teresa Torres will tell you that. It's supposed to be research. Discovery is not supposed to be, I have an idea to build a white remote control. I'm going to go discover if anybody likes that idea. No, that's not discovery. That's just trying to validate your idea and trying to get a green light for something you wanted to do anyway. Discovery is supposed to be about discovering people, systems, tasks, needs, opportunities. That's what we're supposed to be discovering. But many people have skewed this and just said, oh, discovery research, just calling a few customers and seeing if they like our idea. That's technically not what it is. But again, we're going to have to get it wrong and really mess it up and pretend we're product led until the whole thing implodes for us to get past a lot of this. Ana Lucia says maybe it's some sort of way of trying to free themselves from some stigma behind the UX research term, maybe some independence from UX UI fight. I don't think so. I think that it might be more of what you said in the beginning, like trying to align themselves with this whole continuous discovery approach. But the problem is that many people interpret continuous discovery as simple research that anybody on the team can do. You don't need a researcher. Your continuous discovery could hypothetically be done by a product manager calling 3 customers and asking them what they like and what they want. Many of us in UX research would say that's not the correct way to conduct research. That's really not the correct way by any measure. So then they just want to get rid of us because we're out there pointing out that this is not the best way to do something. So you can try to say, oh, I'm not a UX researcher. I'm a continuous discovery, researcher? You want to call it continuous discovery researcher? Is that going to make it better? Or are you going to do the research that tends to fall into these buckets now, which is, well, just run a survey and just call 3 people a week and ask them what they want? I think most UX researchers would not be happy doing that. I don't think they'd be happy that they took that job. I don't think they would feel like they're really getting to know target audiences the correct ways. It's going to be very surface. So again, continuous discovery has some good ideas in theory, but the way that it's typically conducted is worrying. And again, we can see this in the failures that we have. If you are just in a feature factory where you have an idea and your idea of continuous discovery is to go call a few people and ask if they like your idea and then say, yes, we validated it. Great discovery work. Now we're going to build it. And then later on, it fails in a small or large way. We should be looking back at that discovery and going, something went wrong here because we thought this was a good idea. We thought people wanted this. We thought we validated this, and we must have done something wrong if we thought we had this validated and it turned out to be a mistake or a disaster or a failure of some sort. So those are some of the things that we're going to need to do more of to get ourselves out of this fast. We don't need research. We don't need design. We're just going to go back to guessing everything. And a product manager can call 3 people and a product manager can make a Figma file. We're going to have to really be messing this up, which we are, which we can see from our failure rates. When you have Amazon saying 50% A/B test failure rate, Airbnb said 92% A/B test failure rate, and those were all tests they were confident would be successes, and they still had a 92% failure rate. I'm just waiting for companies to go, okay, we have way too many failures. We're failing way too often. We should take a look at why. Why are we failing so often, especially on A/B tests and experiments that we were highly confident would be successes? We must be bad at something. We must be working from bad information or not enough information or the wrong information, or we're working too much from guesses and opinions and assumptions if we're ending up with all of these failures. I'm waiting for someone to put on their business hat and go, ooh, that's a lot of failures. We should not be failing this much. Sure, there are always going to be failures, but we shouldn't be failing 50% of the time. We should be better than a flip of a coin. We shouldn't be failing 80, 90% of the time. That just makes it sound like we have a really bad process and or we don't understand our customers at all. And or whatever we thought we could make our customers do, they don't want to do. So we're really not serving their needs. Like it's going to take somebody with strategy and with business sense to look at all of these failures and go, all right, this is broken. Set this on fire, start again. Now, we're supposed to be doing that with things like the Agile Retro. We're supposed to go into an Agile Retro and go, okay, what went well or badly in the last couple of weeks? Oh, we had all kinds of failures. Oh, our outcomes are all effed up. We should really take a closer look at this. Agile says you're supposed to continuously look at your own processes and be improving them so that you can be more successful. It's not just about being faster and or efficiency. It's about being more successful. Better outcomes for the business, better outcomes for the customers. Where are those? Why aren't we pursuing those? Ana Lucia says, one of the things I really wish they allowed UX research to do was to actually follow up with their work. Okay, you did your research. It's out there. Now what? New project and forget about the past? Yeah, absolutely. There definitely needs to be more long-term look at projects. Very often people look at a quick A/B test after something is released and they go, okay, the numbers went up or the numbers went down. This is a failure or this is a success. Now we're never going to look at it again. Or we're going to make some small change to it and wish us luck. Hopefully that guess was better than the last one. But I think that teams need to be more invested in longer term outcomes. And again, these are in all of the cutesy phrases we say to each other. People say outcomes over outputs, and they talk about the importance of long-term KPIs and metrics and really measuring business success and customer experiences. And they don't do any of this. So it's really simple. If you're not doing any of this, surprise, surprise. You shouldn't be surprised that you're failing as much as you are. If you want to fail less, you're going to have to really lock into what Agile is about, which is about always working from new information and making things better for your internal teams and for the user. You're going to have to look at what real lean is about, because real lean is not about going faster and doing less. Real lean is about cutting waste. That doesn't mean you're doing less. It means you're cutting anything that's wasteful. Failures are wasteful. Failures are wasteful for our company. They're wasteful for our customers. So if you really wanted to be lean, you would have to take a look at where are our processes and our teams and our ways of working causing problems, causing inefficiencies, causing failures, causing wastes, and how do we take a second look at how we do things so that we can be smarter and work better. That's what this is really all about. This is what everybody learns when they take any sort of business course. This is what business is about. Whether or not you have a business degree or none of that matters. It's very simple. Business is about business success. And hopefully it's about having that success through ethical decisions and smart decisions and good strategies. Right now, we're in a world that just wants to guess and go fast and guess again and throw another dart at the board and guess again and put another pile of layered stuff on the guessing lasagna and maybe try another A/B test and guess again. We don't want to stop and do anything well, but we admire the companies who do. Apple doesn't put out MVPs. Apple doesn't rush out half-baked projects. There's a lot of stuff Apple doesn't do, and many people love them for it. But then they go to their job and they do the opposite. And they hang Steve Jobs up on their wall and they want to quote him, and then they don't do anything that Apple does. So I'm not an Apple fan. I'm not saying you have to be exactly like Apple, and Apple's not perfect. But there's a lot they're doing right, and that's why people love them. But yet we don't do any of those things. We say, just go fast. Put out a minimally viable thing. Put out a broken thing and fix it later. The only time Apple does that is mostly by accident. Nobody at Apple plans to put out a minimally viable thing. In fact, Apple's rarely first to market. They love to have Samsung come out with it first. Hello, Samsung user here, hashtag not sponsored. They love to have Samsung come out with it first, get it right and wrong for a year or two, and then Apple goes, okay, now we'll do our version of it and we'll say it's the best. It's the most amazing thing. Well, sure, you add 2 years of other people's success and failures to learn from, plus your own 2 years of research and development and testing and designing and improving. You gave yourself 2 more years than the other guy had. So just a lot more for us to think about. And I think when it comes down to better product and service strategy, we have to be thinking more about the long game, and we have to be thinking more about how do we decrease the numbers of failures we have. Because right now we have too many failures. And we claim we care about outcomes, but then we don't work to have better outcomes. We just keep trying to optimize for some small business win, and very often that's at the expense of the customer. And our customers are smart. They can tell. They can tell when you have re-optimized something to make it harder for you to cancel or to make you more likely to buy this thing. We can tell. Even people who don't work in UX, we can tell. And so I think we have to be working smarter and not faster. Remember, the assembly line of a factory is not turned up to 11. The assembly line is not turned up to the fastest speed it can go. Companies have to find the balance between how fast the assembly line and the factory floor can go and how many defects and mistakes and jammed equipment and injuries we have. So the assembly line does not run at top speed. The assembly line has to work at less than top speed so that we can maximize, that's where you're maximizing efficiency, where you want to reduce mistakes, you want to reduce failures, you want to improve outcomes for the company and the user. And so you don't turn it up to the fastest it can go. But for whatever weird reason, especially in digital stuff and software, we're just trying to turn everybody up to 11. And then we're firing their coworkers and saying, you do their work too. Come on, go faster, go faster. It's just a recipe for burnout, but it's something a company can do when they don't care about you and they think that you're replaceable and they're just going to work you until you get sick and then hire somebody else. It's just that until we change that approach, and until we actually have values that we follow, this is what we're going to see, and it's unfortunate. And so I hope that, I don't know if it'll happen next year, but I really hope we're going to circle back out of it. I really wish people would stop pretending their job has some other title just to do the work they were hired to do. You shouldn't have to call me a product manager or an ops person to let me do the job you hired me to do. So a lot of stuff is broken. And I don't have a lot of, reassuring things to say other than the pendulum always swings and eventually it's going to swing again. And I hope that at some point someone will care about quality. We have every big consulting company on the planet trying to get companies to care more about customer experience, user experience, quality, outcomes, long-term. Every big consulting company is trying to sell this right now. And companies aren't buying it. But eventually they would have to. So it'll be interesting to see how the next years pan out. I don't know what it's going to look like. I'm just going to always keep doing what I can do. So sorry for the slightly depressing ending bit there, but thanks to everybody for joining the Q&A AMA session. Hopefully we'll have another one next week. I'll see if Dr. Nick is still available. If not, we'll certainly reschedule him. But for now, I'm going to say goodbye. And we don't have any webinars happening right now. The webinar series is on hold because everyone's too busy with the holidays. We'll be starting those up again in mid-January. So I'll see everybody. I don't even think we have critical thinking this week because I still only have one thing. Yeah, critical thinking, I'm going to be on an airplane. So I know that if you're in my online communities, it's going to say critical thinking is Friday. It's not. I'm going to be on an airplane. I'm headed back to Arizona to see my workmates. So no critical thinking this week. I hope to see everybody next Tuesday. Thanks and be well, everybody. Bye.